Well, greetings to everyone and welcome again to Give Us Five, our True Growth monthly podcast. And I'll tell you, we got a great guest today, a philosopher, a teacher, a leader, amongst just a few of an author, and his accomplishments in life are too to mention, but a brief bio for him. Dr. Morris, Tom Morris, is a native of Durham, North Carolina, a distinguished alumnus of the Durham Academy. Tom was a Morehead-Cain Scholar at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which has honored him, along with Michael Jordan, I might mention, as a recipient of their Distinguished Young Alumnus Award. He holds two master's degrees as well as a joint PhD, a doctorate, in both philosophy and religious studies from Yale University. He served 15 years as a professor of philosophy at the University of Notre Dame, where he quickly became a campus legend. If you want to know what a popular teacher is, well, professor is, he enjoyed having an eighth of the entire student body enrolled in his classes. And that's quite a number. He's a firm believer that ideas rock the world, and he is now the chairman of the Morris Institute for Human Values in Wilmington, North Carolina. He has authored 30 books, including one that I'll recommend to the audience, and that is The Everyday Patriot. That book is timely in today's unprecedented times, and you might enjoy reading that. And for the rest of his bio, we've given you a link to take you there, but you might also want to go online and visit him at tomvmorris.com. That's Tom, V as in Victor, Morris.com. Welcome, Dr. Morris. Welcome to Give Us Five.
Oh, it's good to be with you, man.
It's great. Okay, well, as you know, we have 5 or 6 questions we like to pose to you and get your candid answers to. And I'm sure everybody's going to learn from what you have to offer today. So we'll get into the first one very quickly. What was your inspiration to take the road in life that you took?
I grew up in the right family to start with. My father would tuck me into bed at night when I was a little kid, and he would give me advice about life. And I remember one thing he said to me that's really been a guiding light to me my whole life. He said, life is supposed to be a series of adventures. The ones you've already been on have prepared you for the next ones, and often in ways you can't even imagine. So trust the process, trust the adventure. And he also said to me things like this. Anything you're doing, do it as long as you love it and you think you have something distinctive to contribute. If either of those things changes, you should make a change. So, I prepared to be a classroom professor at a great university my whole life. I was the first person in my family to ever go to college. My mother told me there was no money. I should figure out what kind of job I wanted to get, and no money for college. I got a full ride to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, a Morehead-Cain Scholarship, and then that set me up for a university fellowship at Yale. So I got a bachelor's, 2 masters, and 2 PhDs, and it didn't cost us anything, which was our budget exactly. So 6 years in graduate school, and just got a wonderful a gift of that, and then went to Notre Dame, a place like Notre Dame, to start my career, and I was there for 15 years. Well, what led me to pursue this role is that I was struck in college with the power of wisdom, with the power of careful thinking about things that matter. And so I wanted to explore both religion, some of the deepest questions, and philosophy, some of the tools for asking those questions. That's how I got into both those things. And and then I sort of became a leader as a first year assistant professor. Even in graduate school, people would say that I always saw the new topic before anybody else. I was always the first person to write on a new topic. I was the first person to get other people to write on the new topic. I think that just a sense of things that needed to be done was kind of part of my makeup. And I always wanted to involve other people, never just do something by myself. And you think the idea of a philosopher, we have the famous statue, the thinker, this lone man, sitting by himself and pondering. But I realized that any big new topic I needed to tackle, I would need the help of other people to really do it right. So I would partner up with all sorts of people. And I never knew I'd be a public philosopher. I thought I was just going to do that in the academy, in the university. But people from outside the campus started calling me. We've heard your classes are really popular. Students really love your classes. Have you ever thought about coming to the Chamber of Commerce and giving a talk? Or have you ever thought about coming to a business group and giving it? Never had. They would pitch me a topic, and I would say, okay, let me look into it. Well, before you knew it, I was giving talks all over South Bend, Indiana, and then shortly after that, all over the world, because there was a need. And it was what I was trained in, how to bring wisdom to people now for how to live better, how to work better, how to have more fulfilling work, how to have more successful lives. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow, what a purpose of life. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. What a great answer. Well, Dr. Morse, there's a long list of positive traits that are exhibited by good leaders, and I just wonder if you might have 3 to 5 that are very important to you.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I was just approached about a year ago to take over the co-authorship of a leadership book that's either number one or number two globally every year since 2002, since it's been out. The head author is was a student of Viktor Frankl, the famous concentration camp survivor who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. George Manning is the psychologist's name who's the first author on that book. And his second author passed away not too long ago, an older man. And he asked me if I would take on the second authorship. And I said, well, I've never done a leadership book before. Let me start off writing my own little short book on what a leadership mindset is all about. Let me clear my own head and see what I think about these things. Then I could join you in this massive project. And so it occurred to me right away up front, because I've worked with so many leaders, that the leadership mindset involves an ability to spot a problem that needs to be solved or an opportunity that needs to be seized. And then as soon as you see this, you spot it, you bring other people together to deal with that problem or deal with that opportunity. You never try to do it just by yourself. If it could involve others, you get others inspired. So that's really important. The ability to spot a problem or an opportunity. Secondly, empathy for those other people, a care and concern for others to be and do their best so that I'm not just corralling a bunch of other people, come follow me, try to keep up. It's like, no, no, no. How can I help them to be their best and do their best and see their best and become their best in this new challenge? So there's that, the empathy and care and concern. There's honesty. I've never known a good leader who wasn't an honest leader,
Mm,
who told people the truth about what was going on and what was needed, and sometimes had to do it diplomatically, sometimes had to do it indirectly, obliquely, but would always do it, would always tell the truth. And then that word that we use that a lot of people never really think about what it means, integrity. It
mm,
comes from an ancient root word that we get our mathematical word integer, a number, a whole number. Integrity is the wholeness of your values and beliefs and commitments, the wholeness of your principles, everything standing together and never making exceptions for a situation. Normally I wouldn't even think about this, but in this situation, we got to do it, unfortunately. No, there's no exceptions. Integrity is about this wholeness of approach so that one of the Stoic philosophers said, at least be consistent, because then people will at least know who you are. I
mm.
love that.
Yeah, that's great. Super, super. Well, there's absolutely no argument that you have had an incredibly successful career and you've achieved much. I just wonder if you think back, is there one experience or one achievement that stands out with you? It's kind of like maybe your aha moment, if you will, like I
Mhm.
got it now.
Yeah, it was when I was a young assistant professor. And there were two projects. One is that there was a famous series done by Oxford University Press called Oxford Studies in Philosophy. There'd be a book on ethics. There'd be a book on philosophy of language. There'd be a book on philosophy of science. And it was a collection of the best articles in the field. And the editor was always a very famous person in that field, senior professor at Oxford University or Cambridge or whatever, somebody in their 60s, somebody in their 70s who had just kind of dominated the field. And they're gathering all the best papers together from their point of view. There was no such book on the concept of God. And philosophy of religion was my area of specialization. And so I wrote to them, to Oxford Press, and said, hey, you should do a volume in Oxford Studies in Philosophy on the concept of God. And here are what I think the best papers are. Well, I was a first year assistant professor. I was no 70-year-old guru in the field. I was just starting the field. And they said, sorry, you're too young. You'd have to have a long and distinguished career to edit one of these books. And I said, well, I understand. And so then I located all the top distinguished people in the field of philosophy of religion all over the world and wrote each of them a letter saying, here's what I think Oxford Press needs to publish in their famous series, and here's what I think the article should be. And oh, look, one of the articles I've picked is one of your famous articles, and here are the people, and here are the other people I'm writing about this. Do you think I'm a person who can get this job done? And they all wrote back and said yes. And I said, well, would you write a letter to Oxford Press? They were all the people who were going to use the book in their classrooms. So I had 15 people writing Oxford University Press saying, this is young guy at Notre Dame. You need to let him do this book. And they said, what can we do? Everybody who would use your book in their classrooms, they're saying to us, you're the guy. So I was the one exception they made. And that's because it wasn't just me, because I brought a crowd of people into it. I wanted to write in philosophy of religion. There were three topics when I got into it: the existence of God, the problem of evil, and the meaningfulness of religious language. Those are the three professional topics. I said we ought to write about a much broader array of issues. Why are there no articles on, and I come from a Christian tradition, distinctively Christian topics like the incarnation, the Trinity, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, all these things that Christians talk about that no philosophers are paying any attention to? I wanted to do my own book on that, on the incarnation, but I also wanted to get all the famous people in the field who had never tackled these issues. And so again, I write them another letter and I give a little list at the bottom who else is getting the letter. And every single person said some version of this. Well, I'm really busy, and I was thinking about dealing with one of these issues maybe at the end of my career. But if you can get half the people on the list to say yes, I'll say yes. And so here I was, the unknown young professor, getting all these famous people together to do a book together. I learned in those two instances, it takes a village. If there's something big that looks too big for you to do alone, you don't have to give up and walk away. You just find the right people to help you do it.
Yeah, that's great. That is super. So, if you're going to be led, what are the qualities you look for in a leader?
You know, some of the ones I've mentioned, like integrity, virtue, which comes from the Latin word virtu, which just meant power or prowess, a virtue like honesty, a virtue like courage, a virtue like generosity, is the Greeks and Romans thought of it as a strength. It's a form of power. It's not a way of staying out of trouble. Too much of ethics is looked at in the business world as a way of staying out of trouble. Let's stay out of trouble, stay out of the crosshairs of the investigators. No, no, no. When you think ethics is about staying out of trouble, you create other ways of staying out of trouble, like complicated accounting practices, and you substitute that. The Greeks and the Romans, the ancient philosophers saw that virtue is a source of strength that cannot be duplicated any other way. So I always look for integrity. I look for virtue. I look for two opposite traits in balance: humility and nobility.
Oh my
The
gosh.
nobility to thinking we are doing something great, something the world needs, and the humility to realize I don't have it all figured out myself. I need to hear from everybody who's working with me. I need to learn from them. So when you get the nobility without the humility, it can easily shade into arrogance. When you get the humility without the nobility, it becomes like, oh, who am I to even try this? But you combine those things together and you have real power. And then along comes authenticity. That's important. Not pretending to be somebody you aren't, but letting people know the real you. I think it's important for leaders. And then finally, the energy it takes to persist and sometimes to endure when you're working on something very hard that's going to take a while to accomplish. The great leader never gives up and
Mm,
just says, this is more than I bargained for. But the great leader, led by virtue, supported by humility and nobility, being authentic, working in an arena of integrity, will say, listen, if we were right to judge it, this is good to start with. We're going to stick with it as long as it takes. And some of the ancient philosophers were great at reframing things. Yeah, it's hard. Here's one of my reframings. I was a year and a half ago. I was going through a rough patch where nothing seemed to be working the way it should. And I was feeling a little depressed that day. I remember it was a tough day, and a little voice in my head said to me, "You weren't born because a bunch of easy stuff needed to get done." And I thought, okay, buck up, Buster, right? Get with the program. Leaders have an ability to not only do that themselves, but to inspire that in everybody around them.
That's great. Well, Dr. Morris, suppose a young person approaches you and says, Dr. Morris, I want to be a leader.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? What would you tell them?
Always be asking other people what they think about the situation in which you want to lead. Never try to figure it out only by yourself. When you ask other people what they think and you really listen to their answers and listen deeply. Uh, this is what I like to call deep listening. It's almost like a spiritual discipline. Most people superficially listen. They don't listen deeply. If you want to be a good leader, you have to listen deeply. First of all, have to ask people what they think, and then you have to really listen to the answers. Then you have to care about the people more than the project. A lot of folks in leadership roles get that backwards. They're only caring about the project or the product, and they're caring about the people only so far as they can help the project and the product and the profit. It just to stick with the P's, right? But it's got to be the people. Put the people first. Always care about people more than the project. People first, everything else second. Never let, and this is especially important for young people now, never let technology get in the way of humanity.
Oh my gosh.
Never let we got two ancient words in the Greek language, and a lot of philosophy in the West starts in ancient Athens, in ancient Greece. They had two words, techne and telos. Techne meant tool, and that's the word from which we get technology. It's all about the how. Telos meant purpose or goal. It's all about the why. We live in a world fixated on the how and forgetting about the why. So I want to tell young people technology can be amazing, but everything that has power for good in this world, other than love, everything else that has power for good has equal and opposite power for ill. Anything that has power to help has power to harm. It's up to us how we use it. We have to be very careful. The more power something has for good, the more it will for ill. We have to be careful how we handle it. The techne needs to be subordinated to the telos or the why. We have a word, technology, this is a word everybody uses. Teleology is a word almost nobody uses, and that means purposiveness. It's all about what our meaning, what our purpose, what our whys are. And if you can help people to really hang on to that, then they won't abuse the new technologies. They'll use them well. So never let technology get in the way of humanity. That's very important to me.
That is great advice, particularly in the era that we're living right now, where it seems that technology is never stopping. It's
Yeah,
overwhelming
exactly.
us.
Yeah, it's
Well,
overwhelming.
we got time for one more quick one, and that is I think you're aware that when we share the true growth experience with an audience, we ask them, one of the things we ask them to do is to identify their five top personal values. I
Yeah.
wonder if you might, I know that you've probably already shared some of those things that are very important,
Mhm.
but I wonder if you might share your top five personal values.
Uh, Name them quickly: love, care, compassion, honesty, integrity. And I start with love because there's this new best-selling book. It was an author's first book he had ever written. He had been a lawyer, and he wrote a book called Theo of Golden. And he self-published it because he wasn't known to literary agents and the publishing companies. He had been a small town lawyer in Georgia or someplace, and he writes this book about a kind of a mysterious old man who visits a town in Georgia and stays there for a while and gets to know the people in town. He's particularly impressed with this young portrait artist who lives in town. And one day they're talking about what makes for good art. And and the portrait artist tries to explain what makes for good art from his point of view. And then he asks the old man Theo, he says, "What about you? What do you think?" And I wish I could quote the passage to you. It's on page 119 for any of your viewers who get a copy of the book, Theo of Golden. It's on page 119. He says, I'm not sure how to say this, but I don't think a work of art can be really good unless it starts with love and it continues with love. It's got love all through it, and it's got love for the people who will view it. Love has to be the beginning and the end, and it has to be the means. It's not just a little sprinkling of salt on an otherwise tasteless dish. It's all through the production of the meal, the painting, the speech, whatever it is you're doing, the service to that client has got to be led and motivated by love. And then the care, compassion, honesty, and integrity will just flow. But it's all got to start with love.
My goodness, that's one of those wow answers that should cause people to think deeply. That's wonderful. Well, Dr. Morris, we cannot thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today, and I am sure the audience is going to glean quite a bit from your responses. And we look forward to maybe another time we can talk
I'd
again.
love that. I'm honored that you thought of me. I'm a great admirer of what you're doing. I think you're making a positive difference in the world in a powerful way. You shine that light into people's lives. True growth is something that bears fruit in all the best ways. And I'm just as pleased as I can be to play a small role in your great enterprise.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Dr. Morris. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.